You know, a lot of people already know your story, and they know the success and the achievement and the amazing people that you coach, the 50 million people around the world that you have served and inspired. But let's go back a little bit. I'm wondering, you know, as much as people know that story, so many of them also know that time of hardship when we were so broke, you were down and out, living in a tiny apartment, and they know that famous story where you didn't even have a proper apartment, so you had to wash your dishes in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Can you remember, though, like a specific moment when you thought, I gotta figure out this money thing. I gotta figure out my financial future. I gotta figure out this wealth game because this can't stand any longer?
Well, I think I had those moments earlier. You know, I think sometimes you hit those moments multiple times, but you don't quite figure it out still. I mean, I grew up in an environment where we had no money and no food. I mean, part of why I'm gonna feed 50 million people this year myself, and hopefully 100 million with people's help, is because we had no money, no food at Thanksgiving. So it was magnified at that time. So I remember in those days saying, I will never have children really till I master this area of my life, which wasn't true. Having my son come was one of the first major things that made me wake up and say, I gotta figure this out. I don't want him to go through the pain, because I associated all of, 4 different fathers. I associated so much pain not being able to take care of our family from not having economic freedom and economic security, even basic security. So I think I was driven earlier to try and solve this, but you think you solve something and you solve it to the level you are. And I'd gotten to a level where I'd started to succeed a little bit, and then I got complacent, quite frankly. I wasn't doing it for the money, and I made some money, and a lot of my friends, I was excited. So I went to some of my friends back from where I grew up, and I said, hey man, let's fly to Egypt, and let's race camels between the pyramids and stuff.
Let's do something with this money.
Yeah, and I wanted to do it with them, and I got rejected by them. I was like, oh, easy for you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, you got all this money. I said, it's not about that. We're going to go together, And I think what happened in my head was money wasn't spiritual all of a sudden. Before you needed money just for your family to be taken care of, so you didn't suffer. Now having money was a negative.
Right.
You're not liked if you have too much money. People judge you. So in my head, what I did is I think I collapsed the two, and I just went, okay, you make enough money to do okay, but not so much that people are going to judge you, and not so bad that you're starving. But when you try to meet that middle world, I found myself living in Venice in this little not one bedroom, bachelor apartment, didn't have a bedroom, washing my
California.
dishes. Yeah, Venice, California, not Venice, Italy, trust me. And I'm in this little apartment, I'm washing on a hot plate, cleaning on a hot plate and washing my dishes in the bathtub. And what shifted me was there were many stacking experiences. I had an experience where I ran out of gas, not because I hadn't filled the tank, because I had no more money. And I pulled over on the side of the road and locked the car, and it was getting dark, and I was praying they didn't tow my car, because that happened once before, and I didn't have the money to get it out of the tow. Walked back home, and I literally got to the front door of my house. It was 2516 Pacific Avenue, apartment 3A in Venice. Anybody wants to go by, they can check it out. Second story, and there's a door there, apartment 3A, and there's this note stapled to the door, and it's typed, and I don't know if you've ever seen one of those in your life, you probably haven't, but it's called a quit or claim document, which says you have 3 days to either pay up or remove your stuff, or the sheriff's gonna do it for you.
Right.
Basically, it's your eviction notice. And I went in and I lit a candle. And I didn't light a candle because I was spiritual. I lit a candle because I also had to pay the electric bill. And it's a true story. I tease about it now, but it's a true story. And I'm reading my eviction notice, and I just got so angry. So the next day, I went on this run. I didn't know what I was doing, but I hadn't run in God knows how many years. I was 38 pounds heavier, and I decided to put this music in my ears. I had one of those old Walkmans, that's how old I am. And I raced to Barracuda by this group, this female group that was singing at that time. And I'll never forget, I came out there and I said, I'm gonna change this. And then I did for a while again. I started to do better, but then I dropped off again. And I think it's because inside all of us, most of us, if you don't have real wealth, I can show you everything what to do, and I will. In my new book, I've interviewed 50 of the smartest people literally on earth. I'm talking about Carl Icahn, the day I met him, he just made $2 billion in an 18-month investment, starting with almost nothing, tiny numbers. Guys like, Paul Tudor Jones hasn't lost money in 28 straight years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unheard of,
Legends.
Right? Total legends, the best in the world. But even that won't work if you don't change what's going on in your head or your heart. And a lot of us aren't aware of it. And so I finally kind of sabotaged myself again, found myself still in that little apartment, and I got to the point where I had, 23, 24, probably $24 and some change left over. And I was getting worried, how am I gonna eat? What am I gonna do? I'm not paying my rent, but how am I gonna eat?
Right.
And I got myself in a place where I said, okay, when I was 17, my mom kicked my dad out, kicked me out. My dad went back east. I had to figure out what to do. So I survived by making a little money and then running to the smorgasbord and loading up for the winter, eating all that I possibly could. So I thought, okay, I got to get out of this environment. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to drive the car because I'm not going to spend the money on parking or driving, but it's only 3.5 miles to Marina del Rey, which is a beautiful place in LA, and there's a place that's still there called El Torito, and it's a little Mexican restaurant on the water, all these boats going by. So I go there, and I'm watching the boats go by, and I'm getting lifted back up. I'm thinking, come on, raise your consciousness. Like, you can do anything. You just need to focus. Stop focusing on who screwed you over, because I had a lot of people kept their word with me.
A lot of people have that. There's bitterness.
Oh, I was
like
bitter.
Very bitter.
I was bitter
Not
towards
just
money.
Scared, but bitter.
I was bitter towards money, and I was also bitter towards the people around me who I felt kind of put me there because they didn't keep their word. Like one guy in particular, I loaned him money when he was desperate, more than $1,000, and he wouldn't even return my phone calls, and I got $25, less than $25 in my name. And so I go there, I load up and everything, tacos, everything, just loading, not carb loading for a run, carb loading to live. And I was about to leave, and before I left, the door opens, I could see the main door, and this little boy walks in who's in this perfect little suit and tie and the whole thing, he even had a little vest, and he's just adorable. And he opens the door, and this beautiful woman walks in who's clearly his mom. And I don't know what it triggered inside me, but I was deeply moved because just the way he conducted himself. He pulled his chair out for his mom, he sat down, he was just so loving, so attentive. It just struck something into me that I can remember to this day. And I watched him, and I found myself smiling inside and just thinking, this is what life's about. Life's about more than the stuff I've been thinking about. And so I walked up to this little boy, and I introduced him myself. I said, I'm Tony, and I don't remember his name. I think my name's Ronnie, I think it was. And I said, Ronnie, I got to tell you something. I said, I am so impressed by you. I said, you are such a gentleman. I said, the way you treat your date, the way you open the door, the way you pull her a chair. I said, I watched all those things. I said, you are a class act. And he goes, she's my mom. And I said, man, that's even better. I said, that's even more of a class act. I'm even more impressed. I'd rather really reinforce him, And I said, and take her to lunch like this is amazing. He goes, well, I don't really have a job yet. And I said, well, no, you are taking her to lunch. He goes, no, I can't. I said, yes, you can. And I had no plan. It wasn't like I thought this thing through. I just instantaneously paid my bill. I reached whatever it was left, $19 and some change, and I just poured it all out right there on the table in front of him. And he looked at me, and his eyes got like big as garbage can covers, and he looked at me shocked, and he smiled, and then he said, oh, I can't take that.
Yeah.
I said, sure you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are, right? And then he just smiled from ear to ear, and I didn't even look at his mom. I wasn't about that, and I walked out of that room, walked out of the restaurant, and I don't know how to describe it. It was, I felt the lightest I've ever felt in my life. I felt euphoric. I had tears start streaming down my face, but they weren't sadness tears. They were just, it was that feeling like, I don't know how to describe it, the feeling like relief, and a feeling of joy, and a feeling of freedom that I can't even tell you. I should have been scared shitless. Where am I going to eat? Where's my next meal going to come from? I don't have another dollar. And I went home that night. I had no fear. And I just went to work on a plan of what I was going to do. And I figured, well, people fast all the time. I'll fast for 5 or 6 days.
I just ate all these tacos.
So it's got to last me that long, right? And I don't know. It was the most beautiful feeling. And I woke up the next morning, and in those days we had the old snail mail and not electronic mail. And this envelope comes, and it's the guy that I've been calling who wouldn't return my phone calls, who owes me this money, and he gave me the $1,000 plus. He gave me interest on it. And at that stage, that would make me last 2-3 weeks, maybe a month I could probably drag that into. And I just started bawling, just crying. And I was like, I'm an emotional character, but I was really emotional. And then in the middle of it, the most beautiful thing that happened was, I asked myself, what does this mean? Why did this happen? And I don't know if it's true, but I decided that I was being rewarded for doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. That if I just in my life, I stopped thinking about that stuff and I just spontaneously did what I believed was right, and I didn't think about money, that it would be like oxygen. You don't stop to say, if I take this breath, will the air be there?
Right.
And if I just do what's right, if I just give spontaneously, truthfully, honestly, I'm not going to worry about this. And I wrote that at the end of my book. I wrote this little story, shared this story, because I was trying to think, how would I explain to people what this book's really about? It's about getting beyond scarcity. You'll never get beyond it. You got to start beyond it. Something has to click inside you.
You had this action of abundance.
It was.
That's what it was.
It was the day I tell people that's
Yeah.
the day I became a wealthy man. The
Yeah.
day I gave up everything and
Yeah.
had no fear.
Yeah, when you give without expectation, and when you give in that moment when
And
you
not
don't
for
have a
positioning,
lot.
not for
Yeah,
positioning,
you weren't
not to try and be somebody,
Yeah.
just because it felt right. So I've let that guide me throughout my life, and it's been, I've had my moments. I've been stupid. I've done dumb things and smart things and everything in between. But I've never gone back to that scarcity. And when that's gone, you can do just about anything else. But I tell people, if you don't give a dime out of a dollar, you're not going to give $1 million out of 10 million
Right.
or 100 million out of $1 billion. You're bullshitting
Yeah,
yourself.
it's a mindset thing, and
a lot of
wherever
people-
it's fixed now, it's going to be the same. You throw more
Exactly.
money on it, it's the same exact.
And what
mindset.
people don't realize is it teaches your brain there's more than enough when you will give what you don't think you can give.